Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a review of one of my favorite pieces of gear, and that is the JetBoil. Before we jump into it, one of the important things is that I'm not being paid by anybody to do this gear review. If you follow this channel, you'll know that we do a bunch of trips. We do backpacking, we do enduro camping, we do camping off of our sailboats, and pretty much everywhere I go, I have one of these with me, and I just love them. So I am doing it because for two reasons. One, because I love them, and two, because I've used them for long enough now to know that even though this is a great system, it's not perfect, and there are things to know and be mindful of, and those are the things that we're going to cover in this video. If you are looking to buy one of these, you should check out the description below. There's an affiliate link, and any of the money that we make from that goes towards making more videos like this. So you should definitely check that out. So let's jump into the specs real quick. First off, this is a compact, lightweight system. It weighs 13.1 ounces without the cooking fuel inside of it. Everything that you need is right inside the cooking pot itself. It has a koozie here to help keep the contents inside warm with a thermochromatic indicator that would allow you to see from a distance whether or not the contents inside are boiling. The pot itself is made out of titanium. The cooking compartment of it is 1 liter, and it will boil, or is said to be able to boil, half a liter of water in 100 seconds, which we will test out to see how true that is. The burn rate on it, or the fuel consumption rate, is 10 liters of water per 100 grams of the isobutane propane mixed fuel. Obviously that is all dependent on the elevation that you're using it at and the temperature. Those factors will affect those statistics, but in the ideal operating conditions, I would suspect that those statistics are probably true. Just so you can get an idea of the actual size of it, this thing is 7 1/8 inch by 3 7/8 inch, so just under 4 inches. One of the cool things about the JetBoil system is that there are a lot of attachments that you can buy. I have a couple of them. I have the frying pan attachment, which sits on top of the burner, just like that, and that allows you to use other pots, and I think this was specifically made for the frying pan. And then there's also the French press, which works just like the French press on the Flash system. You just put it in the top and then press down on it, and it strains out your coffee. Alright, so let's go ahead and set this thing up in case you are unfamiliar with how these things work. On the top here you've got a rubberized lid, which also has a pour spout or drinking spout in case you're making coffee and you want to drink right out of the JetBoil itself. You have a burner here. You have the foot that goes on the bottom of the fuel canister, and it unfolds like that. And you have the fuel canister itself, which the smaller ones do fit inside the JetBoil. On the bottom you have a measuring cup slash drinking bowl slash drinking cup. It does have a 1 cup measuring line on it in case you need that for anything. The magic of the JetBoil are really these fins right here. As you might know, titanium is a material that conducts heat really quickly. It also disperses heat really quickly, hence the koozie lining for it. It also really helps to keep the contents inside warm. But what happens is the burner hits centrally in the bottom of the JetBoil, and then the heat kind of disperses out through these fins, and these fins capture that heat and transfer it into the bottom of the JetBoil, allowing it to burn or boil the contents a lot faster. So you have the burner here, and there's these notches that correspond with the grooves in the burner itself. It goes on and you twist it and it's connected. You have the fuel canister here that screws onto the bottom. And then you have a striker and the fuel regulator. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn the fuel on and then hit the striker, and that's going to turn the fuel on. So before that gets piping hot, I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. So I just want to point out that this is not by any means a new out-of-the-box JetBoil. I probably had this for 3, maybe 4 years. I probably cooked hundreds of meals in it. It hasn't let me down, but there are definitely some issues that I've noticed, things that could be made better, or just ways that you might want to use it that you wouldn't think about if you were buying it brand new, that are important to know when you're considering spending 100 to 120 bucks on a JetBoil. The first thing that I learned about this was that it's really easy to burn food to the bottom of the JetBoil. Now, there are really 2 ways to use it depending on the camp food that you're bringing. Obviously, there's heating up water and pouring it onto instant prepared food that cooks just by pouring the boiled water on it. And then there is trying to cook food in the JetBoil, which is a whole other thing. The problem is in order to boil the water as quickly as the JetBoil does, it has to transfer a lot of heat through the very small surface. So you have a liter of capacity, and you've got a pretty small surface area to heat that capacity up with. And what happens is, since this is so deep, if you're cooking something like a pasta or something like that, or even oatmeal, or really anything that's sticky or has any kind of density at all that's more than just like soup, it's really easy to burn it to the bottom of this. And what I found is that you really have to keep stirring and keep it cooking on low. You can't just turn it on and leave it, otherwise what you're going to get is just a giant burnt mess of food. As an extension of that, the other issue is that it's long and it's thin, and my hands aren't huge, but they're not tiny either, and I can get it inside the JetBoil, but it is hard to clean when there's food just caked and burnt to the bottom of this. So if you are considering cooking food in the JetBoil, I would recommend that you don't go with the Flash system. They do make larger kind of pot-sized versions of this, which are even compatible with the same burner, but they're 1.5 liters, so they're a little bit bigger around and about the same depth. One of the other things that I was noticing, I did a pretty cold weather camping trip back about 1.5 2 months ago, and the temperatures got down to around 5 degrees, and what I was noticing is the striker here was starting to stick, and it got to a point where I couldn't actually get this thing going. We had a lighter, just a regular Bic lighter that we were using to light the stove or the burner, and that worked okay. But if you were depending on this in a cold weather situation and you didn't have a lighter, you'd be really disappointed because you would basically be eating cold meals. And what was happening was, you go to push it in and it wouldn't actually click. It was like you couldn't push it in far enough, and then when you went to let it out, it would be really slow to come back out. Every other temperature, like right now, it's working fine. You can see the spark going there. It's no issue. But at those cold temperatures, it was definitely a noticeable problem. So one of the things that I learned on that same camping trip was that it really matters what type of fuel you're using. Obviously, there are different brands and there are different price points for them, and you can't really tell by looking at any of the canisters what the difference is between them. Obviously, this has nothing to do with the JetBoil itself, but it really does matter if you want to get the maximum performance out of it. So with any of these fuels, they all say that they are an isobutane propane mixed fuels, and the difference between isobutane and propane is the vapor pressure, or the point at which they turn from being a gas or being a liquid to being a gas. Propane at sea level has a boiling temperature of minus 44 degrees. Whereas isobutane has a sea level boiling temperature of 11 degrees. And obviously, if you're using these at really cold temperatures, you're going to find that if it's 10 degrees out, you're not going to get the same kind of performance out of these fuels as you would if you were at 70 degrees. It's the same with if you were, at 12,000 feet of elevation as opposed to at sea level. So there's a large variation of operating conditions that you can use these in that are going to affect the performance. A good ratio for these fuels, so MSR uses a 20% propane to 80% isobutane ratio, and I'm not sure about the rest of these brands. I'm sure the JetBoil house brand and MSR are probably very comparable, but if you get like a cheaper brand like this Primus brand that I got at like a Big Five, you're going to find that this is probably more isobutane than it is propane. It's going to perform poorly by comparison to the other two, where if you're using this in the middle of summer at the beach, you probably won't notice the difference, but if you're doing any kind of cold weather mountaineering or something like that, you'll want to make sure that you have a good quality Four Seasons fuel like MSR or like the JetBoil brand. One of the things that I wish JetBoil had done just a little bit better is make this cup a little bit more robust. Since it sits on the bottom of the JetBoil on the outside and this thing gets thrown around quite a bit or dropped or anything like that, this thing is exposed and it is likely to crack. The material is kind of flexible, which I think is good because it gives it some kind of elasticity, but if it gets hit on the edge here, it is likely to crack. At least that's what happened to my other JetBoil. I do find that I use this quite often, so it is a good thing to have, but I think that if it was a little bit thicker, it would be better and just more durable. The last big thing that I've learned in having used a JetBoil is that one usually is not enough. What I like to do, if you're using this for one person, if you're going camping by yourself for whatever reason, you can get by with one JetBoil, but it's really kind of difficult to prepare a meal, especially if you want any kind of variety with just one. So what I usually do, and the reason that I have so many of these is because I usually give one to everybody, and then everybody can carry one, and then you can just kind of do this family style meal where one person cooks one thing, one person makes some, kind of a hot beverage or coffee or hot chocolate or something like that, and then everybody just kind of passes around the JetBoils and shares the food. But as far as kind of having one for a group of any more than 3 people, you're going to be a little bit hard put to make any kind of variety with just one JetBoil. So let's jump into doing some tests now. I want to see if the JetBoil holds up to the specs that they say it does. I'm going to be using the house brand JetBoil JetPower fuel. There is a 2-cup measuring line on the inside of the JetBoil here. I'm going to fill it up to that point, to the half-liter point, and then I'm going to time it to see just how long it takes to actually boil. There's a couple of things to note. First off, it's probably about 40 to 45 degrees in here right now, so it is kind of cold. It's sitting on an ice cold table, and we're at about 6,500 feet of elevation. So this won't perform, I would imagine, like it would at sea level on a sunny, warm day. But nevertheless, it's probably a good test for how you would use it in the real situation or on a real camping trip or something like that. So yeah, let's jump into it. Alright, there it goes. Alright. Alright, so to boil half a liter of water, it took 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, that's not as good as, well, I guess it's about a minute more than what they would estimate it would take. But I would imagine that that's probably just because we're so much higher in elevation and because it is quite a bit cooler in here right now. So I also want to test the different types of fuel to see how long each one of them takes. So the next one I'm going to try out is the MSR brand, the ISO Pro. And then we'll try out the Primus brand after that, just to kind of see where they compare against each other. Right, ready, go. Alright, so that one took only just a little bit longer. It took 2 minutes and 57 seconds. So now, let's do one more test with the Primus brand just to see how that compares. Alright, so the Primus brand took about 4 minutes and 25 seconds to start boiling. So you can really see there's a significant difference between the boiling rate and the different types of fuel that you use. So now that I'm done testing out all the fuels, I want to do another test. I want to see how well this koozie actually insulates and how long it'll keep the water hot for. This will be a purely subjective test. I don't actually have a thermometer on me, but I want to see how long it'll take to go from a boiling temperature to being like a really hot drinking temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the burner, and I'm going to start stopwatch, and I'm going to let it run just to see how long this takes. Alright, so we're coming up on 29 minutes now, and the water is still really hot, but I can dunk my finger in it, and it's, you know, it's uncomfortable. I can't leave it in there, but it's still really hot. So I'd say when you use this, even in colder temperatures, the water is probably good for about 30 minutes if you leave the lid on, which is still a pretty long time considering how long it would take to either drink whatever's in here or eat the food that you have prepared. So I think that concludes everything that I have to say about the JetBoil. Like I mentioned, this is a system that I really do love. I think that it's great, it's lightweight, it's reliable, it's everything that you need to make a meal out on the trail or wherever you happen to be. If you are looking to buy one of these, please do it through the link in the description below. All the money that comes from that helps us make more videos, and it really helps to support this channel. Also subscribe and like this video if you like the content that we're putting out. We really appreciate it. Thank you.